Imagine this. Two of the closest allies on Earth, countries that share the longest undefended border in the world, are quietly clashing over one of the planet's most valuable resources. Not in a courtroom, not with tanks or soldiers, but in a silent, high-stakes struggle over oil buried deep under the Arctic seabed. The shocking reality? Both the United States and Canada claim ownership of the same Arctic waters. And as climate change melts the ice that once made this region unreachable, the prize has never been closer. Billions of barrels of oil, trillions of cubic feet of natural gas, energy wealth that could redefine global power for decades. This isn't a future problem, it's happening right now. And while Washington and Ottawa prefer to keep it quiet, their disagreement could soon explode into one of the most consequential resource conflicts of the century. Welcome to what some call the Silent War. Introduction. To understand why the U.S. and Canada are at odds over the Arctic, we first need to recognize just how much the region has changed. The Arctic is warming nearly 4 times faster than the rest of the planet. Sea ice that once blocked human activity for centuries is vanishing, opening shipping lanes, exposing new seabeds, and making untapped oil and gas deposits accessible. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, the Arctic may hold about 13% of the world's undiscovered oil and nearly 30% of its natural gas. For resource-hungry nations, that's not just valuable, it's irresistible. At the heart of this North American dispute is the Beaufort Sea, an area off the coast of Alaska and Canada's Yukon. Both countries insist the same wedge of ocean belongs to them. On paper, it may look like a simple cartographic disagreement, a matter of lines on a map, but in reality, it's a test of sovereignty, energy security, and national pride. And the timing couldn't be more critical. With Russia's war in Ukraine and instability in the Middle East, the Western world is scrambling for reliable energy sources. For both Washington and Ottawa, the Arctic is no longer a distant frontier. It's a strategic lifeline, which is why their long-standing friendship, one of the strongest in the world, is now being tested by an invisible border under freezing waters. Number 1. The Beaufort Sea Dispute. At the center of this conflict lies a wedge-shaped area of ocean in the icy Beaufort Sea, north of Alaska and Canada's Yukon. On a map, it may look like a small slice, but the stakes beneath those waters are enormous. Billions of barrels of oil and trillions of cubic feet of natural gas. Canada argues the maritime boundary should follow the 141st meridian, the same line that defines the land border between Alaska and the Yukon, straight north into the Arctic. For Ottawa, this is a matter of continuity. The land border doesn't stop at the shore. It extends into the ocean. The U.S. sees things differently. Washington insists on using the equidistance principle, a common international method where the border is drawn halfway between the two coastlines. That interpretation creates a diagonal line instead of a straight one, carving out a very different boundary. The overlap between these two claims is massive, nearly 21,000 square kilometers, an area the size of New Jersey. This disagreement dates back to the 1970s, when oil companies first began showing interest in Arctic exploration. Canada staked its claim early, but the U.S. rejected it. Since then, both sides have avoided taking the matter to the International Court of Justice or any other tribunal. Why? Because the risk of losing is too high. A court decision could not only strip away valuable energy rights, but also weaken broader Arctic claims against rivals like Russia. Instead, both governments have chosen to quietly agree to disagree, allowing the issue to simmer in the background. But here's the thing. The dispute isn't just about oil. For Canada, it's about sovereignty and a chance to prove that it controls its northern frontier. For the United States, it's about setting a precedent. If Washington concedes here, it could weaken its stance in other global disputes where territorial lines are contested. That's why neither side is backing down. The Beaufort Sea isn't just a patch of water, it's a front line in the silent struggle over sovereignty, pride, and power. Number 2. The stakes of energy security. Why does this wedge of ocean matter so much? The answer is energy security. Oil and gas aren't just commodities. They are the lifeblood of modern nations, fueling economies, militaries, and global influence. For both the U.S. and Canada, the Arctic represents a chance to secure energy independence in a world where foreign supplies are increasingly unreliable. From the U.S. perspective, the stakes are obvious. America consumes more oil than nearly any country on Earth. While it produces a massive share domestically, it still depends on imports. Historically, those imports have come from the Middle East, Venezuela, and, until recently, even Russia. But every one of those suppliers carries risk. Wars in the Gulf, political instability in South America, and sanctions on Moscow. Arctic. Oil offers something different. Energy reserves close to home, shielded from hostile powers, and under the control of U.S. allies. For Washington, that's a strategic dream. Canada sees it through a different lens. As one of the world's largest energy exporters, Canada already ships massive amounts of oil and gas south to the U.S. But much of this comes from Alberta's oil sands, expensive, carbon-heavy, and controversial. The Arctic promises a new frontier, resources that could boost Canada's energy portfolio, elevate its status as a global energy leader, and, just as importantly, solidify sovereignty over its northern lands. For Ottawa, controlling the Beaufort Sea isn't just about dollars, it's about proving that Canada has a rightful place at the Arctic table, alongside giants like Russia and the United States. The military dimension is just as important. Energy fuels navies, air forces, and supply chains. If the U.S. can secure Arctic reserves, it gains leverage against rivals and ensures its forces are less dependent on foreign oil. If Canada secures them, it strengthens its independence and influence in NATO. Lose them, and both risk falling behind in an era where energy equals power. In short, the Arctic isn't just a treasure chest of oil, it's a strategic insurance policy. And both the U.S. and Canada know that in a world defined by uncertainty, whoever controls it gains a massive advantage. Number 3. Environmental risks and Indigenous voices. The Arctic may look like a frozen wasteland from afar, but it is one of the most delicate ecosystems on Earth. A single oil spill in the Beaufort Sea could be catastrophic. Unlike warmer waters, where nature helps break down oil, the Arctic's cold climate slows the process dramatically. Spilled oil here could remain for decades. Cleanup operations would be a logistical nightmare. Ice, storms, and remoteness make large-scale responses nearly impossible. The lessons of history are sobering. The 1989 Exxon Valdez disaster in Alaska devastated Prince William Sound, wiping out fisheries and wildlife. And that was in a far more accessible location than the Beaufort Sea. Environmentalists warn that drilling in the Arctic risks repeating such tragedies, this time in an environment far less capable of recovery. Then there are the Indigenous peoples, the Inuvialuit in Canada, the Inupiat in Alaska, whose lives are deeply tied to the Arctic's land and sea. For them, the Arctic isn't just geography, it's home, heritage, and survival. Traditional hunting and fishing practices depend on a healthy ecosystem. Oil exploration threatens not only the environment, but also their cultural identity. Indigenous leaders argue they deserve a central role in decisions about Arctic development. Too often, they say, their voices are sidelined by governments and corporations chasing profits. But the picture isn't one-sided. Some Indigenous communities see oil development as a potential lifeline, bringing jobs, infrastructure, and economic growth to regions often neglected by national governments. For them, drilling offers opportunities to improve living conditions, even if it comes with risks. This creates a complex divide. Oil is both a threat and a chance for empowerment depending on perspective. The environmental and Indigenous dimensions transform the U.S. Canada dispute into more than a border quarrel. It's a moral test. Should the drive for energy security override the duty to protect fragile ecosystems? Should governments in Washington and Ottawa decide, or should those who live on the Arctic's edge have the final say? These questions will define not only the Beaufort debate, but also the credibility of both nations on the world stage. Number 4. The bigger geopolitical picture. The Beaufort Sea dispute might look small compared to the vast Arctic, but the global chessboard tells another story. While the U.S. and Canada debate boundaries, other powers are seizing opportunities. Russia leads the charge, pouring billions into Arctic infrastructure, deploying nuclear icebreakers, and militarizing the region with bases and airfields. For Moscow, the Arctic isn't just about oil, it's about power projection and dominance in the north. China, though not an Arctic nation, has declared itself a near-Arctic state. It invests heavily in shipping routes, infrastructure, and research, branding its vision the Polar Silk Road. By partnering with Russia and financing projects, Beijing is embedding itself in the Arctic's future. Its interest isn't symbolic, it's about securing influence in a region expected to become a hub of energy and trade. Europe, too, is highly active. Norway, Denmark through Greenland, and Iceland all see the Arctic as critical to their national futures. NATO is paying more attention to the region, especially as tensions with Russia escalate. In this context, a divided U.S. and Canada send the wrong message. While rivals expand aggressively, two allies are stuck in a quiet tug-of-war over a sliver of sea. The danger is clear. Disunity weakens North America's Arctic position. If the U.S. and Canada can't resolve their own dispute, how can they lead in protecting Arctic security against Russia and China? This makes the Beaufort conflict not just a bilateral issue, but a strategic vulnerability for the entire Western alliance. Number 5. The future of the alliance. The United States and Canada are close partners, bound by trade, defense, and shared values. But the Beaufort Sea dispute highlights how even the strongest alliances have cracks. The danger isn't an armed clash, it's an erosion of trust. For Canada, conceding would feel like surrendering sovereignty over its Arctic frontier. For the U.S., compromise could set a precedent that weakens its position in disputes elsewhere. That tension could quietly bleed into other areas: trade talks, defense coordination, even climate policy. Domestic politics add fuel to the fire. Canadian leaders face pressure to defend Arctic sovereignty as a matter of pride, while U.S. leaders frame Arctic resources as essential for energy security. If either side leans into nationalism, the dispute could quickly escalate in public opinion. But there's also opportunity. Both countries could choose cooperation instead of confrontation through joint development agreements, shared revenue models, or co-managed environmental protections. Resolving the dispute constructively would strengthen the alliance, proving that even tricky sovereignty questions can be solved without weakening either side. It would also allow the U.S. and Canada to present a united front against Russia, China, and other rivals in the Arctic. The future of the alliance depends on a simple question: do Washington and Ottawa see more value in partnership than in competition? History suggests yes, but history also warns that sovereignty and resources can ignite rivalry, even among friends. The silent war between the U.S. and Canada isn't fought with armies but with maps, oil reserves, and strategic calculations. At stake are sovereignty, energy security, the environment, Indigenous rights, and the balance of power in the Arctic. What happens in the Beaufort Sea will ripple far beyond its icy waters. Will Washington and Ottawa find a way to share the Arctic's riches, strengthening their alliance in the process? Or will this quiet rivalry deepen, opening space for rivals like Russia and China to gain ground? One thing is certain: the Arctic is no longer remote. Its future will shape ours. And in this silent struggle between friends, the outcome may decide who leads the next chapter of the global energy era.